The United States is finally leaving Afghanistan. Don't ask us about the troops that are going to be left. Nope. Less than 1,000. There's still going to be troops there and probably private contractors just like in Iraq. But the United States is leaving Afghanistan. And it has been 20 years, you guys. 20 years. The longest war in American history. The longest. And here's the thing. We lost. We lost the war. It was a terrible war to begin with. And I'm not saying we could have won it. And the reason we couldn't have won it is because when you try and win a war, you at least have to have some barometer for what winning is. Do you know what I mean? It's like any game. And for too many people, war is a game. But it's like, all right, so you got to get, whatever. Like, I'm like, what's a game? Hearts. You gotta get the least amount of hearts. No, this is a terrible game. But like, there were literally no barometer for success in Afghanistan. Was it democracy? Oh no, it was Osama bin Laden. No, it was freeing the women. Education. Oil? No, damn it. I don't know. We're gone. So I'm absolutely happy that we left Afghanistan and we are leaving Afghanistan. But what you will not hear any analysts, generals, anyone in the Biden administration say, anyone in the security administration apparatus, or on the media say, is that we lost. We could not win this war. We did not know what winning was even going to look like, but I'll tell you what it seemed to look like, right? 20 years of going in circles and leaving destitution, death, torture in our wake, and a whole hell of a lot of PTSD. So 2,300 American soldiers have died there, a little bit more, 20,666 injured. Since 2002, at least 47,000 non-combatants have been killed. That means Afghan civilians have been killed in Afghanistan, with another 43,000 injured, and of course, millions and millions of people displaced. The war in Afghanistan proves that, like, America can't even do bad things well. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's how I felt under Trump, right? It was like, this fool can't even do the evil stuff good, Like, he can't even separate kids from their parents in an orderly fashion, right? He's a disorganized fascist. And maybe that was the point. And you sort of have to think, maybe the point for the US's involvement in Afghanistan was utter disarray. But a little bit about what's exactly happening now. I want to actually, fill y'all in. Balls. Okay, I have too many tabs. I'm very confused. But NATO allies are leaving, including the UK, including Turkey, although Turkey is trying to stay somehow. All those folks are leaving. And yes, there will be about 650 American troops. There may be British troops left over in Afghanistan. And personally, I think that's way better than having 10,000 or 40,000 troops, right? Or any just under 1,000. I'm like, okay, it might not be a full withdrawal, but it's withdrawal enough, right? This nation building project can finally be over. This BS nation building project. The real thing to know about all this is that another reason that we know we didn't win is because the Taliban is back. The Taliban has been back for a while. That was one of the supposed reasons that we were in Afghanistan, was to get rid of the Taliban, which was the only governing body other than different warring factions of warlords. It was the Taliban. That's not to toot the Taliban's horn at all. They are obviously horribly anti-democratic religious zealots who are awful towards women, but they had some semblance of control, awful control, semblance of it. They're making a comeback. They've been making a comeback. Something like 1 in 3 chances that Kabul will fall to the Taliban. Not good chances, but there are estimates that that in certain provinces, Taliban controls about 75% of those provinces. It's not good. It's not good for the people that the United States so-called wanted to liberate. That being said, why the F were we even trying to do that in the first place? And I'm so glad we are leaving that country. Now, not everyone is in agreement, because of course the right wing will say, oh, the Taliban's back. We got to stay. We have to keep going. 20 years? We need 20 more, baby. No, that's not the answer. But some are saying that actually it's not the case that the Taliban would come back. And I want to point you guys to this great article that was written by, her name is Ann Jones. This is for Tom Dispatch. And this is back in 2017, guys. So 2017, and she writes a lot about Afghanistan. TomDispatch.com, if you guys don't follow that website, it's great. And it's really good for foreign policy. So she spoke with a prominent Afghan diplomat who doesn't think so doesn't agree that the Taliban will come back. Shukriya Barazkai, a longtime member of the Afghan parliament, now serving as Afghanistan's ambassador to Norway, herself a victim in 2014 of a Taliban suicide bomber, told me only weeks ago, the Taliban are so over. They just want to go home, but you Americans won't let them. She reminded me that the Taliban are not some invading army. That would be us. They are Afghan citizens distinguished from their countrymen chiefly by their extreme religious conservatism, misogyny, and punitive approach to governance. Think of them as the Afghan equivalent of our own evangelical right-wing Republicans, which I love that analogy because it's like, yeah, imagine if a foreign entity invaded the United States and sort of gave cause for like the armed, crazy religious zealots, to fan their flames and give them even more popularity because they say that they're fighting this foreign invading army. You find some almost in every town, and the more you rile them up, the meaner they get and the more followers they gain. It's like the internet. But in times of peace, which Afghanistan has not known for 40 years, many Taliban most likely would return to being farmers, shopkeepers, villagers, like their fathers before them, perhaps imposing local law and order, but unlikely to seek control of Kabul and risk bringing the Americans down on them again. Interesting take. Okay, so now, granted, this was in 2017. Obviously, this is 4 years later. Things could have changed. The Taliban, I know, has grown stronger. In fact, some estimates say that they're as strong as they were. So this is not to say that this analysis is bearing out, but it is interesting that when your top priority, as in the Taliban's, is to get American interference out of your country, leave the country, that suddenly you don't have an enemy to fight anymore and your political project feels lacking, right? Again, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but it's interesting that this is someone in parliament in Afghanistan who is saying that. Let's rewind though. Let's try to understand exactly what the hell the war in Afghanistan has been about and what the United States did there, right? Remember, this was on the backs of the attacks, 9/11 attacks in New York, in DC. Taliban, who is not Al-Qaeda, but who has relationships with Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda claiming responsibility under Osama bin Laden, obviously for the 9/11 terrorist attacks in the United States. That suddenly made the Taliban the number one enemy. Oh, you supposedly harbor the harborers of the harboring harbors? You gone. And there was no negotiation with the Taliban, who once again, iron fist, terrible, but were actually controlling their own country from there. Hey. So this is the same, from the same article, and I love this explanation. So This is Anne again. She says, the short version of that long history of Afghanistan might read like this. The U.S. bombed Afghanistan in 2001 without giving the Taliban government either time to surrender or negotiate the surrender of their country's most problematic foreign guest, the Saudi Osama bin Laden. Once again, not Afghan. The Bush administration then restored the power to the ultra-conservative Islamic Mujahideen warlords, first engaged by the CIA under William Bill Casey, its devout Catholic director, to fight the, quote, godless communists of the Soviet Union in the long proxy war of the 1980s. Remember, the United States propping up the Mujahideen, propping up the likes of Osama bin Laden for years, trying to lock the Soviet Union into that quagmire, which we then decided to step into only a decade later. Afghans polled in 2001 wanted those warlords, war criminals, all banned forever from public life. Washington, however, established in Kabul a government of sorts through vast sums of cash at its selected leaders, heading in an administrative state that did not yet exist, and then, for years to come, alternately ignored or denounced the resulting corruption it had unthinkingly built into its new Afghan quote-unquote democracy. Such was the quote-unquote liberation of the country. So essentially, you come to this country, you ignore what everyone would like, you reinforce the corruption, you don't give the Taliban any time to either surrender or change sides, and then you blame the Afghans when things don't work out for them. She continues, the story of the last 15 years there is largely a sum of just contradictory and self-defeating acts. During that time, American officials regularly humiliated Hamid Karzai, their hand-picked president. They set up a centralized government in Kabul, and then, through provincial reconstruction teams controlled by the U.S. military, they also supported a passel of provincial warlords hostile to that government. What are we doing? They sent their military to invade Iraq. Oh, right. Pretext to go to Iraq, of course. We haven't even we've forgotten about Cheney and Rumsfeld and the like. While the Taliban, who were never allowed to surrender, as Anand Gopal recounts in his riveting book, No Good Men Among the Living, which is such a good book. I love it. It took me like forever to finish for no reason, but it's so good. Regrouped and went back to war. In 2007, they undermined Afghan efforts to negotiate peace with the Taliban, opting instead to surge more American troops into the country, doubling their numbers in 2008, and then continue to spend a fortune in taxpayer dollars, at least 65 billion of them, training hundreds of thousands of Afghan soldiers and police to do the fighting their elected government had wanted to stop. So essentially how we're funding, we love in the United States and the Middle East to fund both sides of conflicts, to pick one side and to be against and allergic to any kind of negotiation, against a surrender or anything. So the surge of American troops under Obama was one of those moments where we had a chance, to get out of Iraq and get out of Afghanistan. But I think in an attempt to prove that he was still a hawk, just didn't believe in the Iraq war, Obama surged troops back into, it was something like 100,000 troops into Afghanistan to once again try and win an unwinnable war that we have literally no idea what we were doing or why we were there. Even after he got Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. Or can we leave now? No. We got to stay because women's education, dude. But women aren't getting educated here in the U.S. Yeah, I know. But one of the schools is named after Laura Bush. That's true. So we can't leave. We've got to stay. So I mentioned Iraq a little bit. And similar things happened in Iraq. So, for example, obviously, this was when Cheney and Rumsfeld and Ashcroft and Colin Powell were like, wait a minute, Afghanistan's not strategic unless we want to start running opium, which I'll get to later because I'm not convinced we haven't. We'll talk about it in a second. But, the money is over in Iraq. The money is in oil. We need to topple Saddam Hussein, who had nothing to do with 9/11. Cool. Same thing happened. When we toppled Saddam Hussein, the Ba'athist Party, which was his party, were the ones in power. They were terrible, but they were the ones running the government. What do we say? We don't negotiate with terrorists. Ba'athists, I know we did prop you up a lot in the 80s, and we gave you the chemical weapons that you used against your own population, like the Kurds. We taught you our torture techniques, but we will not negotiate with you. Now you're terrorists. So we won't even allow you to come back into government. We want to start the government just from scratch, and or from the Iraqi equivalent of warlords, different Shia and Sunni factions of militant groups who we then pitted against one another. You remember the Iraq War. It was a good time. It was, once again, another failure. So yes, so Obama in 2011, I believe, surged the troops to 100,000. And when he was winding down, because like they tried for a few years and they're like, we're not gonna. He wound down, but he still kept 1,200 troops. So 12,000 troops. So even though Obama said he was taking troops out after the surge, he kept 12,000. Them's a lot of troops. Them's a lot of troops. Fast forward to now. We've lost. Will any of our officials, will any of our leaders, will any American own up to the fact that we lost? No. But we're getting closer, guys. Let's look at what Biden had to say and assess. This is him before the July 4th weekend talking about the exit from Afghanistan.
Is the drawdown going to be done in the next few days?
No. No, we're on track exactly as to where we expect it to be. But I wanted to make sure there was enough, quote, running room that we wouldn't be able to do it all to September. There'll still be some forces left, but it's a rational drawdown with our allies, and it's making, so there's nothing unusual about it.
Are you worried that the Afghan government might fall? I mean, we are hearing about the Taliban is taking more and more districts.
Look, we're in that war for 20 years, 20 years. And I think I met with the Afghan government here in the White House, in the Oval. I think they have the capacity to be able to sustain the government. There's going to have to be, down the road, more negotiations, I suspect. But I am concerned that they deal with the internal issues that they have to be able to generate the kind of support they need nationwide to maintain the government.
Okay. So this is Biden's response on right before the holiday, which is like, he did a Biden, right? He comes back to, look, man, 20 years. I think they can run it on their own. And he's not wrong. Right? Except as an anti-war leftist, I would put it a little bit differently, which is we are the reason that they cannot run their government on their own. We cavalierly tried to run their government, installing president after president, and then actively working against that president for the last 20 years. We are the reason that they cannot govern, because their first line item is an order of business is get the Americans out. They need to leave. So I'm not hearing a lot of owning up to that fact, but I am hearing an unwillingness to be pandered by the right and a lot of centrist questions to go back into the war and to try and continue to once again win this unwinnable quagmire enigma of a ridiculous occupation and war in Afghanistan that has cost countless lives. So I appreciate that, even though reporters are like trying to egg him on, like, oh, but what if the Taliban falls? And I think the answer is, well, then it falls. I don't know. It falls, but we're not going to keep on pouring taxpayer money into this.
There is evidence that Kabul is threatened.
It's
Some
Kabul.
of the intelligence reports have suggested it could be in 6 months or thereabouts. Do you think you've got the capability to help provide any kind of air support, military support to them to keep the capital safe, even if the U.S. troops are obviously fully out by that time?
We have worked out an over-horizon capacity that we can be value added, but the Afghans are going to have to be able to do it themselves with the Air Force they have, which you're helping them maintain.
Okay. So that was his response. That was from the Times. Now, he kept on being pressed on it, and you guys might have seen this, but I'm going to show you
Question
anyway.
Afghanistan. Look, it's 4th of July. I'm concerned that you guys are asking me questions that I'll answer next week, but this is a holiday weekend. I'm going to celebrate it. There's great things happening. Economy's growing faster than any time in 40 years. We've got a record number of new jobs. COVID deaths are down 90%. Wages are up faster than any time in 15 years. We're bringing our troops home. We have all across America, people are going to ball games and doing good things. This is a good. I'll answer all your negative questions. Not negative.
I love that. I'll be willing to answer all of your downer questions. You guys are such big bummers. Like, I know he is not Trump, but that is such a Trumpism to be like, why are you so nasty? Why must you be so negative? Oh, being president is all about being positive. Power of positive thinking.
Legitimate question.
Are you concerned that there is a potential this weekend in places where vaccination levels are not particularly high that there will be a new COVID outbreaks in various regions?
I am concerned.
Okay, he's going back into COVID, but basically it was like, come on, man, I'm trying to celebrate the 4th of July. Let's enjoy ourselves. Like, which is sad because even his 4th of July plan to have, what was it, 75% or 70% of Americans vaccinated didn't work because we are, once again, trash. That's my trash. That didn't work. But he wants to talk about sweet things, not the withdrawal from Afghanistan. But I do think that when the United States makes a decision, it needs to stick to it. It can't be continually baited by the media, by the threat of what ifs. And even, it's not just Biden, right? It is generals who've been in Afghanistan, who've fought on the ground, who have seen firsthand the lack of strategy, who know that they're being sent into a geopolitical Rubik's Cube that is only costing more money and lives. They don't know. You listen to, generals on NPR and policy experts, they all support the withdrawal because they're like, I don't know at this point, really don't know what to do. Because I don't really know what our goal was. We can't build a nation. I don't know if we can educate every single woman there. I think we've spent trillions of dollars too much and it's time to leave. And also, small tidbit, everyone there hates us. So that makes it very hard to win this war. Somehow raiding people's homes in the middle of the night makes them mad or whatever. One last thing on this is two last things on this. One, I really have to shout out, there are a lot of good documentaries on Afghanistan, but one of my absolute favorites came out in 2010. It's called Restrepo, and it was nominated for an Academy Award. And it's embedded, right? So you're embedded with troops, which I always have some problem with. But the candidness, the brutality, the fly on the wall nature of this documentary is truly stunning. It is about the 2nd Company of the 503rd Infantry that was stationed in the Korangal Valley, which was a Taliban stronghold, is a Taliban stronghold. And this infantry unit was just sitting ducks, straight sitting ducks. And it'd be like, okay, we're on this little, we have a little base here on this outpost, and we want to get there. Why? I don't know. In order to get there, 5 of us will probably die. Okay. Well, why do we need to go there? We're just contesting territory from the Taliban, but it's their country. Okay. So it was arguably one of the most dangerous outposts in Afghanistan. Restrepo is the name of one of the soldiers who was in fact murdered and killed, trying to encroach on Taliban land. They clearly didn't have the firepower, the backup. Once again, I'm not arguing for that, but it is fascinating to see the level of the lack of preparedness, the lack of the level of danger with which we sent these young men mostly men in to die for nothing, for total BS, for turf wars in a country that wasn't ours. And the best part of that is that you've got, I believe, like some rank, what is it, lieutenant, colonel, somebody whose job, he was like sort of the commanding officer of this infantry unit, and he would go into like the homes of tribal leaders in these villages, right, where they were. And a lot of these villages, they're farmers, they're herders. And he's going in there and he's like sitting down in their homes, and there's like, you know, nothing. It's just like a concrete slab, people sitting on the ground. It's like a like a gathering of some of the leaders in the village. And you know, you see this sort of beefy Midwestern dude coming in going like, all right guys, well we took on fire the other night. You gonna tell me who those fighters were? You gonna tell me who you, because you want roads, right? Do you want us to build you roads? Do you want running water? And they're like, what? We've been fine with dirt roads and like, you know, water from our well for a really long time. You're not gonna, oh, you want the water? Because you need to give up your fighters. You need to tell us who they were. And they're like, we're not fighters. We're not militants. We don't know who you're talking about. You know who we're talking about. And they're like, stop arresting like our innocent kids who are 18 years old and disappearing them into black sites like Bagram. And they're like, okay, whoa. And it's this like painfully, like the most painful diplomatic miss you've ever seen. And all you have to do is watch that documentary and watch that scene to show you how pig-headed, how overzealous the American project in Afghanistan was, trying to, you know, use the idea of developing one's village as a carrot, right, to lure them into like snitching on their own people, or like giving up who the Taliban fighters were, even though they didn't know who the Taliban fighters were. Or even if they did, why would they tell you? Have you earned their trust? Clearly, they didn't. And it's like existentially painful. I'm sorry, I'm killing your vibe. They weren't diplomats. What's interesting is the ways that military endeavors, you know, from frontline infantrymen get laundered by the higher ups as, oh, this was a success. Oh yeah, we're in the Korengal Valley. We lost a few guys, but we're on that hill now. We're over there now. And that was a success. And that just gets laundered up and laundered up and laundered up until we continue in this money pit of a war that is Afghanistan. The last thing I want to say about Afghanistan is that no one is going to admit in the United States government that we lost, and I think that's good, right? Like I think we can say among us that we've lost and that was a good thing, and that this was a failure not on the scale, but not unlike Vietnam. But I'm so afraid of, you know, the US military's might and the bloodlust that the far right has in this country, that I'm like, oh yeah, tell them we won. I don't care. Like we won so hard in Afghanistan. Just do that. Because whatever prevents us from going back there, whatever lies the United States military needs to tell itself about whether we won or whether we did our jobs or not, fine, right? I'm not trying to rob any veteran of their right to serve with dignity, to be taken care of when they get home. My God, the way to honor soldiers is to not send them into a war that is unwinnable, is not to send them into a war that is illegal, is not to send them into a place where they will be killing, maiming, detaining, disappearing civilians. That is not a righteous war. We can talk later about what a righteous war even would look like. Hey, thanks so much for watching the Bitchuation Room podcast live stream. And while you're here, why don't you just subscribe to this channel? I promise it'll be good.